before going into the first conversation, do you remember what I told you when you said you're going to be pitching to Tim? I said he's going to love you. Why is he going to love you? Why did he invest in you? Which was a really long process, and I'm sure you'll talk about it at one point in time. The reason.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Tekka Talks. Ozan Sunmez. And Ozan, besides being a good friend and a mentor, etc., which he will tell us about subsequently, is a serial founder with a global focus and passion. He is an angel investor, brutal startup mentor, and a program director with 12 plus years of international experience in investing and building startup programs. And that's actually how we met him. But anyway, that's a long story. Okay, he is affiliated with UC Berkeley, Stanford, CPD, MITEF, Pan Arab, and various innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems. He has not only mentored and designed programs targeting tech startup founders, but also social and environmental impact founders in programs created by 500 Sanabil Mina, Endeavor Turkey, UCAST Palestine, Bloom Masters Tunisia, Kaus Takadam KSA, African Business Heroes, Jack Ma, and many more. He has designed and delivered training and mentorship programs in corporate entrepreneurship and innovation programs for Fortune 500 companies and global brands like Ford, Otosan in Turkey, Siemens Next 47, Akbanks Plus, and Zane's Zaniac Mina. He is a founding member of the Metaverse Union. He's keen to discuss the utopic and dystopic elements we should expect to see in Web3 crypto and the VR, AR, XR space. He's a proud girl dad and always wishes to spend more time writing and reading. Ozan, this is the official bio. Tell us the unofficial story.
Well, the unofficial story is I'm just a curious guy. Found myself in doing finance randomly. I'm a CPA. Probably you didn't know that. I did that for about 10 years at the beginning of my career, starting in 2001. It was in Deloitte. That's why I come to know the financial sector and everything around it. I audited large banks. I audited investment banks. I audited manufacturing companies. I audited companies like Coca-Cola. And then I ended up in a university, auditing a university, actually, because they were working with IFC. Education has always been a passion for me, and I'm always a learner. I'm never done. Will never be done. I like the fact that I'm trying to stay humble, telling people I know very little. I just traveled a lot, and I'm curious a lot. And through that university engagement, they asked me how I will improve myself, because I was very black and white. I was a finance professor. Numbers are good, numbers are bad. It's this way or that way. So they told me, let's give you an MBA. So they gave me an MBA, where I figured, oh crap, like life is not black and white. Business is not black and white. There's so much uncertainty that nobody knows what to do with it. And I started learning a lot more on the core of these stuff, which is innovation and entrepreneurship. I was very lucky because the time I was doing my MBA was the first time the 4 steps of Epiphany was coming out, Lean Startup was coming out, Business Model Generation was coming out, Lean Stack was coming out. And then I started learning from people who created those content, who created those books, by traveling a lot, by going to as many places as I can. I got certified as an incubation manager in the US. I traveled a lot to US in multiple places. And then I started getting this Entrepreneurship 2.0 teaching crew. I built a really nice global network of people who are as curious as I am. And one thing led to another. I started working in an entrepreneurial university in Turkey, left my finance career, and that entrepreneurial university was able to secure a deal with King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, because Kaus was investing in early stage seed stage startups back then. This is 10 years ago. And they brought all these founders to Turkey, and I designed a really good program for them for the founders, and I realized the ecosystem in Turkey was booming supposedly, but it was not booming towards new technology, high tech, and breakthrough stuff, but it was moving towards more cloning. So I said, okay, there's very little things I can keep on learning here. So I made the jump when Kaust offered me a position, August 2013, and then January 14, I was in the beautiful campus of King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, and um, one thing led to another. We built entrepreneurship programs. Every year, we build a new program, one for global entrepreneurs, one for impact entrepreneurs, one for deep tech entrepreneurs. So I learned multiple facets of things. And in the meantime, I was fortunate enough to start working with MIT Enterprise Forum, Pan Arab, who was doing the region's most celebrated, most successful entrepreneurship boot camps. However, they didn't have training capabilities as much as we had in Kaust. So my good colleagues Abdurrahman Al Jifri and Amal Dokhan and I, we risked being not very liked by the groups because we were traveling around the Middle East and doing trainings. But we did it because we wanted to help as many people as possible. That's how we actually got together. How we met first time many years ago, and after that, I was lucky, but I seeked luck. I traveled a lot. I helped a lot. And then all of a sudden, one day I was helping a friend in San Francisco do an event together. I traveled there as a tourist, and I figured out my alma mater in Turkey, Middle East Technical University, ODTÜ, has actually opened a co-working space and an incubation center in the middle of San Francisco, like literally 625 Market Street, beautiful building on top of Bank of America. But they didn't have anybody to run programs. So I said, that's interesting. I found the general manager of the university, of the Technopark. I was I was brutally honest. I think I still have that. So I told them what they should be doing, what they should not be doing, how they can improve this. This is very important. I can help. And then all of a sudden he said, if you know so much, why don't you come and work for us? I was like, I'm happy in Kaust. I'm doing a lot of work. I'm not a big fan of living in the States. San Francisco is a good ideal space, but I don't think you can really, I can help too much because the scope is too limited. But then they said the scope will increase. They'll have a seed fund. They'll actually design the program. We actually designed a program together with the Technopark to invest in 20 startups per year, which is a good amount of number. And then I started, I moved to Silicon Valley. I partnered with Draper University, who happily is your investors. I'm very happy to have some comments on that. They were really fun moments. I built my own startup there. I failed at my own startup on fundraising. I'm not a guy who would like to fundraise and run through the wall. So hats off to both of you for doing that multiple times. You have more courage than I have. And then 3 years later, I
It's
built
just
good
thick skin,
partnerships.
Ozan.
Well, I have a very thick skin. It's just, well, I thought about this a lot with myself, but I don't feel really well when I cannot foresee the next 5, 7 years in my head. I have a trouble with that. I help people get over that, but I can't help myself. And I'm happy. It's contentment. I think I seek. And I know you guys are not doing it for the money as well. I'm not doing it for the money. You're not doing it for the money. It's just what drives your heart really into it. And plus, I don't have the right team structure to be able to do it. I really have a few really important partners. So hats off to Beliz and Alperen for doing products and working with me on these endeavors. But we're not the type of people who just run through, create a startup, manage 50 people, 60 people, 100 people. I don't like to manage more than 5 people in my life. And that doesn't qualify me. That kind of disqualifies me from running a startup. But yeah, I mean, after US, right 1 year before the pandemic, I came back to Turkey to build an impact program for United Nations Development Program in partnership with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Turkey, as well as Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, World Food Program, and many other partners. Impact is in my heart. I mean, education and impact, those are the two things I really care about a lot. And then the pandemic hit. I became a full-time founder. I built my own corporate entrepreneurship programs with partners from all over the world. I started delivering programs for Stanford Center for Professional Development certified group called Global Innovation Catalyst. Did programs in Palestine, did programs in Korea, did programs in the US. I was very happy. And then we moved on to building products. We're launching a few of them these days using AI. That makes it very easy. And we are helping very large companies like Siemens and Ford to look into the outside world and to help their internal capabilities and talent to match what's needed on the outside and bring it inside, as well as doing spin outs, which is very important for large companies. And other than that, I try to read and I try to write and I try to be active as much as I can. I thought I should do this podcast in my treadmill and my walking pad, but I had been on it for the past 3 hours and my legs are shaking. So I said, okay, I need to sit down
No, it's
before
okay.
we
Sit
have
down.
another technical problem. Yeah, I know. And that's kind of the long story with a lot of gaps inside.
So thank you for this intro,
You're
Ozan. So
welcome.
I'm gonna be really direct.
Go ahead.
When we first pitched to you, Takadao,
Yeah,
and I think we were the only Web3 and we're 1.5 years ahead of the curve.
probably.
What turned into your head is like, what are they trying to build? Like, what was in your head when we first pitched to you and the Takadam team even?
Yeah.
What was running into your head?
We'll be right back after the break.
We believe that the financial system is broken and that our banks and insurance companies don't have our best interests at heart. We've built Takatan to help us get together as a community to save, earn, and access credit. Join us today and discover how you can grow your savings while helping others.
So the insights you had from, I mean, again, I think the interest I have in Takadao is coming from the impact side I have is like, we were very much focused on faith-based, goodwill-based, and good-based programs and startups. So what you're doing is closing a huge gap for a lot of believers in the world, which is making it first a really good opportunity. The second, it's also enabling a lot of new value creation through safer means, through fair means, through technological means. And that to me is an important use case. Like a lot of, I mean, I've been doing this research and reading a lot on. First, it was Web3, then it became Metaverse. Now it's Web3 enabled. It's a little bit mixed, but apart from the hype of Metaverse, I mean, what we're seeing is the ownership structures are changing, and Web3 is an element of that. Things will be cheaper, transactions will be cheaper, and things will be owned. Ownership will change. The relationship between what we own, not in financial terms only, how we own our data, how we share our data, how we collect all this, connect all the dots in our lives will change. And one part of that is definitely in financial sector. One part of that is planning for the future. One part of that is building a community around that future. And again, I think you meet all these interesting touch points all together. So I was like, okay, that's an interesting part. So I remember that's that because my background is in finance. I know how broken the system is as well. So that was
Can
really
you also share, because it was a year ago almost. What was also the ugly part of that, where people are like in disbelief, or I want to hear also the good things. Alhamdulillah, we see.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
the bad vision. For example, we were not able to convince the 12 VC quote unquote in Takadem to win the final prize. Being like the first Takaful. But in a sense, who the audience are they prepared to move into this world, or they are yet unprepared in this region, particularly GCC. Yeah.
Just to give a bit of context, because we're going deep into the law of Ozan and Takadao. A bit of context. We were part of an accelerator program when we first launched last year. It was the Kaus Takadam accelerator program, which was held in Saudi Arabia. And Ozan was the main mentor behind it and our main mentor. So he actually witnessed, from inception until, what we are today.
Yeah.
And he knows us inside out very well. And through this program, we had it's a series of engagements, and it culminated with a prize being given out. So that was a $100,000 cash prize for 10 startups from within the program.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get the $100,000 cash prize. This is what Morad is talking about. And so he's poking.
Yeah,
It's not.
That's what Morad is griping about and has been griping about.
It's not the 10. It's not the 100K. We did made it to the final 20. Yeah, we did. What I want to understand. I mean, with such a vision and try to really shake up things. Maybe they didn't understand what we were doing, basically, or they were like, "Why the blockchain? Why this? Why that?" So
let's put this in more neutral terms, okay? Because Ozan is coming from the background of, you're more on the side of the VC and the investors than you are on the side of the entrepreneurs, even though you've been on both sides of the tables, absolutely. But because you're part of the acceleration side, you see things differently from how we will see this. We see things, right? So from that perspective, on more neutral terms, what are the issues that investors have in the region with Web3 startups, with crypto startups?
Yeah, so I'm going to tie to that anyways. Before going into the first conversation, do you remember what I told you when you said you're going to be pitching to Tim? I said, he's going to love you. Why is he going to love you? Why did he invest in you? Which was a really long process, and I'm sure you'll talk about it at one point in time. The reason, and I lived there, and I know how they think. The problem is not how they think, or the problem is not how anywhere else outside of Silicon Valley, how they think. So I'll give you a story. So all the deals, all the first meetings with VCs happen in coffee stores in San Francisco. For people in the Bay Area, either San Francisco or in Mountain View, there are few places everybody knows. When you see and when you overhear, everybody's pitching to everybody. If you go and sit there, you will hear crazy stuff every single day. My first time in San Francisco, actually, first time in the Bay Area, I stayed in somewhere close to Mountain View, Palo Alto or Mountain View, somewhere in that. And I did not know anything. I was so ignorant. I found a cheap place that had bunk beds. I don't remember when was the last time you had bunk beds. It's super cheap, super easy. So I did not know it was a hacker house. What the hacker? So when you say hacker, it's like, wait, what? So that's how old I was back then. So I went to the hacker house, and I went there in the morning. It's super empty, super quiet. It's like around 1-ish. There's only one person. I said, da-da-da-da, and I put my stuff. They said, quiet, everybody's sleeping. I was like, 1 p.m. Like, why is everybody sleeping? And I put my stuff very quietly, and I went out, done my deal, came back exhausted. I was already jet lagged, and I started seeing people completely lost in what they're doing, completely in the flow. I was like, okay, interesting. Those people were sleeping by then. So I went to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. They're still working. I woke up. They're going to bed. I was like, what is this? What the hell is this? I said, okay, they're hacking. They're building something for a hackathon. There are like 8 people. And then I started to clock like the stuff that's happening in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, the pace of things happening in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, the history of how much wealth was created in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. I mean, in Bay Area in general, let's say. Not even US, like not the totality of US, only in Bay Area, is ridiculous. And the amount of wealth that was transferred to the people working in those companies makes it very difficult to compete with. The whole equity game, whole ownership game, equity options, vesting options, people giving up jobs to come and work for a startup nobody has heard of, then making it big, then doing it themselves, doing it 5 times, 6 times in 10, 20 years. That's the pace of things happening in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. That's why every new thing is coming to the minds of people, and it's appreciated by the investors in that community. That's why whoever has a crazy idea would find its first buyers, first believers in there, because the mindset is not what would make it not work. This is this mindset in the other part of the world. The mindset in San Francisco or Bay Area in general is like, what if it works? What is the most important, what is the most crazy thing that will happen if this idea just picks up, if it works? Not, there are hundreds of other things that will make the idea die. I mean, this is a big difference. So one last story on that. It was really bizarre for me to remember. On a Thursday, I was in a pitch event in San Francisco. I judged in Hacks, I judged in Techstars, that mentored most of the time. I don't like decision making on these events because I know how painful it is for founders. I don't want to be part of that. So there were 2 people. One of them had a 5-year experience in NASA. The other just graduated and worked in Boeing for 2 years. And they had an elderly guy who's, I think, one of their uncle who had more experience in manufacturing and defense industry. They were pitching lower orbit satellite, lower orbit islands, you can call them, where self-constructing robots will build themselves gathering robots, which they will go to different asteroids that are not far off the galaxy, but asteroids and also space debris that are in lower orbit, they're not going towards the moon, and collect these small debris by just little push of rockets, completely built by the material on that platform, whatever that is, and then they will assemble them together and make them big chunks, and so that other stuff will bring them back. I mean, they haven't figured what will bring them back, but they were working on this. So I'm sitting there, listening them pitch, and literally thinking, what is the potential of this? How valuable is this? Does it actually work? I'm thinking, what are the steps that will make it possible? Because I live there. I'm around people who live there. And everybody's thinking, not in the terms, oh, this will never work, it's a crazy idea, it's not even science fiction, it's stupid, you're ridiculous, you're 3 people, nobody's thinking that way. Everybody's thinking, if they get enough funding, if they get the first prototype, if they get the first launch, if they get the first self-building robots, if they find the first satellites from 1960s, 70s, whatever, that has kilos of gold in them, by the way, and every other precious material, what will happen if it works? Not the tons of things that will happen that will not work. 2 days later, on Friday, I took a flight. I came to Turkey. I'm again judging or listening to an event in Turkey. And I'm the only person in the whole crowd with that mindset of what is the maximum potential. Everybody is doing, oh, this will never work because, this will never work because, this will never work because. And I was like, wait a second. What are you guys talking about? This could actually work. This is a problem they can solve. This is a problem they can solve. And I'm actually defending the founder who has a crazy idea, but not as crazy as I had 2 days ago in San Francisco. And everybody is like looking at me as I'm crazy. And that's the mindset. That's never replicable, because nobody in this part of the world made money with things other than tangible atoms, which is real estate, finance, and others.
I have, this brings me to actually, it's a good segue, because I want to talk about now the Web3, right? And let's say cryptocurrency, let's say metaverse, all of these elements that we largely loosely term as Web3. What will happen to the world if it works?
Oh, God. So that's a good question. And I'm trying to find the answer to that question in utopia and dystopia. I recently wrote a chapter in a book on digital twins and industrial digital twins. And the book is about, like, the chapter is on utopian and dystopian literature, elements of humanity that includes reproduction, elements of humanity that includes collaboration, elements of humanity that includes production, like most of the three top things: producing something, reproducing, and then making it living. And looking forward, I mean, looking backwards, the people who had brilliant minds have thought about these stuff, not in the terms of technology, especially, not in the terms of, I'm not talking about science fiction. Science fiction is, again, a part of this whole conversation, but utopia is more fundamental thinking. Dystopia, utopia are more fundamental thinking. So going forward, ownership is going to change. That's what we kept talking about. And in those utopian and dystopian novels and literature, you see alternative societies in far future where ownership changed, ownership structure changed. And how do they behave is imagined by these people, brilliant writers, brilliant people. And I read those utopic, dystopic societies, and I'm trying to understand, can this actually be true? Like Dispossessed, for an example. Nobody owns anything. You don't even own, or you don't even have a social relationship boundary, as you don't have titles like a mother or a father or a wife or a husband. That is, again, part of ownership, part of connectivity. That doesn't even exist. Nobody knows anything. Everybody works for everybody else. And everybody is helping everybody else in their own capacity. Even writing a poem is working. It's not like you're working in a gulag and mining stuff and distributing food. It's not like communism or socialism. It's a very different mindset of how people will change. So I believe in the future, yes, ownership will change. We start to see very small beginnings of that. Car ownership, car buyership is going down. People are renting. Home ownership is going down. People are renting. Stuff ownership is going down. People are using and giving away. They have different structures. They're doing it with rent, transactional money. They're doing it with goodwill, tokens of appreciation, and they're different tools. So we need tools for that transactional world to change. So Web3 plays a role in that. The other piece is ownership of data, ownership of creation. Again, we kept talking about this. We start seeing small examples. Everybody, especially during the pandemic, everybody started to understand, oh, this large company I'm working for does not care too much about me. I need to build a second life. I need to build a value chain for myself. So everybody has started to think, I need to first take care of myself, health-wise. That's why the walking pad and everything I'm doing with my health. I need to own my health because nobody is going to own it. Second, most importantly, a lot of parents understood this very clearly. I need to own the right to understand what's going on in my child's head, the right to understand education. Because previously, what we got used to, send the kids at 8 to a shuttle, go to the school, they come back, you have no idea what they're learning. And they keep moving class by class by class. They get into exams, they get into school. You have no idea. After 7, you literally have no idea what your kids are learning. That changed drastically, because your kid was sitting in the room next to you on a Zoom, on a Teams, on a Google Meet, whatever, and you were actually witnessing what the teacher is telling your kids to do, how they're behaving, how kids are behaving among each other. So education will change. Ownership of intellectual capacity and products will change as a result of all these learnings and all these changes in the education system. Degrees will change. The perception of lifelong learning is going to be ridiculous because nobody will think lifelong learning is not a thing. Yes, we wake up, we learn until we die. That's the default, should be the default. But now, currently, you have to go to a school to be learned. You have to get a diploma to learn. You have to go to this to learn. No, everybody will keep on learning. How are you going to document it? Nothing else but Web3 will help you. Everybody will be graded on what they have read, what they contributed to the society intellectually, and in terms of products. As I said, a poem as a product is still a product of culture, you can say. So on that front, Web3 will play an enormous role. And of course, on the transactional side of things, the traditional money system will be inefficient. It's already inefficient all the way around. I mean, not even going into the details of that. But the way things will be transacted is going to change. How you're selling things is going to change. What you're selling is going to change. It already did. Airbnb just created this funny thing called experiences. People are monetizing experiences now. And now they're using a platform on Airbnb. But going forward, these platforms will be democratized, and you won't need $1 billion company like Airbnb to put everything together. Everybody will be their own Airbnb. Everybody will be their own experience center. And in order to monetize that, we're seeing it with Gumroad, we're selling it with Patreon. Everybody will be able to make money from all around the world by providing an experience, providing a learning, providing companionship, providing some material of transactional value. And the money system at the moment doesn't work for that microtransactions. And of course, the second part is like there's millions and billions of people still unbanked. That's ridiculous in this part of the world. In everywhere, by the way, even in the US, there are millions of people who are unbanked because the banking structure is not designed for everybody. The banking structure is designed for a small amount of minority managing the infrastructure of finance, and small amount of, and relatively half the population of the planet doing some transactions. A lot of the times, founders complain why banks don't give them loans. That's not the job of the banks. Banks are in the business of making money for their shareholders. They're not in the business of financing good financing structures, financing individuals. No, that doesn't work that way. So Web3 will again play an important point as well on that one.
Yeah, touching on that actually is very interesting. I was in a discussion yesterday with some expert in tokenomics, and and they were talking about the model. Of course, there's a lot of nonsense also happening with nonsensical project coming out, and they're going for ICO, and most of the people who are in the game, I would say, is just to get an upside on the value of the token when it's pre-launch and so on and so forth. So we've been through this. Yeah, we've been through this circle and everything when we talk about Web3 blockchain. But the guy was like, you see how we build company today, and that's not new, by the way. There's the notion of equity. When you get an investor, somebody that has skin in the game, it takes equity and everything. It was like telling us basically the new wave of Web3 solution and Web3 product, when they are actually have a real value proposition, and they have really a product market fit. Okay, the user acquisition channel through of course a utility token and something tied to the business can really transform the entire business 100%. All around. Meaning the one who will own the business are the masses globally. So he was telling us, for example, OpenSea, for example, were kind of the first guys in the NFT business, blah, blah, blah. They were doing well. One guy came, I don't know what the name of the startup is, something called Pulps or something like that, who literally say OpenSea founders own a majority of the company, and they just gave token, but the token is make people better off. But the new version of the new competitor of OpenSea, we want to give you ownership of the company itself, all of you guys. And then, so they literally sunk OpenSea overnight. The guy were dumping the NFT, giving the NFT, they were buying back the NFT from the OpenSea and say, come on. So the notion of having 100% ownership globally, you could even take, let's say, a decentralized Airbnb. Airbnb now, the stakeholder of you. Now you give it to a Web3 solution where everybody has a say and stuff like that, and can be a representative and can do can really be part of that. And that's the powerful things that we see happening, especially among the people who are less, the South nation, I would say, who are willing to put a lot of effort, a lot of work into making things happen. See, so this kind of very interesting concept, like we say, the concept of equity has been around forever, or a reward, the carrot and the stick and so on and so forth. But this new model of democratizing, having accessibility for everybody to have an ownership of what you have launched, it's really kind of mind-blowing. So when we come to the insurance business, it's another level, I believe. It's like It's like the sky is the limit, in that respect, in a sense.
I agree.
Yeah, so let's get into this a little bit more. Okay, so I think even at Takadao, we say that our mission is to build community-owned financial services, and
Yes.
you're absolutely right. I feel like the key contribution of the Web3 is really ownership, right? Ownership
True.
of a variety of things. So in our case, it's a very clear, obvious what the ownership is. It's the ownership in this particular protocol that runs financial services, insurance, be it savings, be it whatever. But for the sake of the listeners, give me another use case where Web3 actually affects ownership. So you talked about a bunch of different things, but let's go a little bit deeper and let's examine how does technology actually contribute to a sort of decentralization of ownership.
We'll be right back after the break.
Tekka Talks brings you stories from around the world that will help you understand how crypto and Islamic finance can change our lives for the better. Subscribe and follow us to keep learning.
I mean, even taking a look at from the perspective of monetary savings, that people are usually giving it used to do away from interest, but now it's mostly on interest earning assets, interest bearing assets. That accumulation was tied to standards. That accumulation was tied to non-monetary assets like gold to start with, and then it just broke off, and that's how the world is being moving from material-based possessions towards that's backed by at least something that's on digital-based now. So the issue with the Web3 and everything around that is going to be able to make this monetary system accessible to people who would do this on a minute scale. They will not need to be banks in order to create assets. They will not do the consolidation of large financial institutions in the US. I mean, you can look into the history. There were thousands and thousands of banks, rural banks that has only one or two places, that has only one or two chapters, stores and everything, and they were serving a community. But the economic system forced them out of their business, and they started getting accumulated, and then you became cartels. You have very few number of players controlling the financial assets, financial systems. And that is why the promise of Web3 and everything I talked about a little before is going to be we hope, of course, like this is a hope. The banks will not go without a fight. But actually, they don't also need to fight because they're not caring about half the work that's unbanked. So even if the Web3 helps solve the problems, financial transactional problems, and wealth accumulation problems of the unbanked, it's still a big business, $1 trillion worth business. I mean, the banks are afraid they're missing out the opportunity, but again, they don't need to fight this anyways. But long story short, the practical side of things is putting it into the hands of normal people, using technologies that's helping day-to-day activities of people. One example, the SDG Impact Accelerator that me and my partner Bays built within the partnership with the UNDP and others. They always had this, like one of the problem areas was financial inclusion. So we called in for startups that will come and solve the financial inclusion. Let me give you the example of one startup that was doing amazing work. The number one problem with financial aid in the world is corruption. So it's not like financial aid doesn't flow from countries that have resources to people or countries that don't have resources. There's so many levels of corruption in between. It just gets very minimum impact. The way to solve it, World Food Program designed a system where the aid will be indirectly transacted to the individual's digital wallet that will be unlocked as a token in retail shops that are only allowing people in need to shop from them. And the way to validate this whole interaction is, of course, through a mobile phone, which everybody has. Not the connectivity is an issue, but most of the world has at least a mobile phone with some connectivity. And the way it was unlocking the security protocol I was unlocking was through retina scans. So imagine you're going into a shop. If you don't have the digital wallet, you can get your eye scan or in a retina scan to access to your digital wallet and spend the money in designated space. It's a pilot program. I'm not sure if it's scaled or not, but it facilitated the transaction of tax revenue of governments who are giving it to aid institutions whose main job is to help people in need. They were transacting that accounts directly without any interference, without any intermediary, without anybody blocking anything, anybody like doing anything on corruption. And people were using it in the way they were designed to be used. So all of a sudden, you have all these people. You couldn't be doing anything with the banks because they're not banked. You couldn't be doing anything with cash because it's corruptible. You couldn't do anything with anything else. But there's need, there's support. What happens in the middle is a mess. So that's the use case for transacting it through Web3 and making it very easy for accessible people.
Very good. So transitioning now as well, I'd like to see your view on what's happening in Turkey. I see, mashallah, the adoption of crypto, it's booming. There's so many conferences taking place there. A lot of people are seeing and looking at one of the top countries in the world, I think, in terms of adoption, is Turkey. What causes it, and why are we here? And if you can, without getting into trouble, telling us, what's happening.
I think the reason, to be honest, I'm not seeing too many use cases in Turkey. I'm not seeing people transacting with crypto. I'm not seeing people doing much transactional operations with crypto, other than wealth accumulation, other than financial means, other than token acquisition. For a while, unfortunately, it just became a boom because of these digital lands, digital metaverse assets, NFTs included, but it's a different story. Land acquisition is a triggering point. And I think it has something to do with the real estate position in Turkey, which is not the best in the world, which is not going to the best direction. Rents are increasing, land is becoming more expensive, things are becoming more difficult to build. Costs are just skyrocketed over the last 3 years because of bad financial management and bad decisions that doesn't have any scientific background or anything, just the wrong side of things is happening in Turkey in that sense. In terms of mindset. And I think the reason why people were looking for alternatives way to get out fast and quick, and that became a really unfortunate ground for pump and dump schemes. So a lot of people got conned, a lot of people lost a lot of money. But the way I'm seeing is not on the transactional side why crypto is happening, but more and more Turkish startups are building new technologies through Web3, and they're getting funding as well. They're moving towards transactions, they're moving towards use cases. Not all of them are B2C use cases, so I'm not seeing too much on the ground, but there are a lot of B2B use cases, which is happening very fast. And I think the interest of, for example, e-games, electronic games, there are now tokens for that. There are companies building transaction and use case, also wealth accumulation cases for Web3 tokens and e-games. Not like play to earn schemes, but like the gamers have profiles where they can invest. The gamers can move back and forth. And those are the things that are important. I think the young generation is more close to understanding these, and they wanted to have economic asset creation opportunity for themselves. But I think a lot of people lost interest over the last 2 years. It kind of picked up with the crypto, but then when it died down fast. But again, it's going to happen. Use cases will happen. We're just waiting for the right time, I think.
Yeah. So since we're in the subject of entrepreneurship in Web3, do you think there are any differences between entrepreneurship in Web3 versus entrepreneurship in Web2? Is there some kind of a different playbook? Is it that the founders have a different profile? Is it like a different mindset?
I think so, because I mean, in order to understand, I mean, I remember us having almost hour-long conversations on token economics and the business model of Takadao. And those conversations are very difficult for traditional entrepreneurs to go through because they're focusing on transactions. When transaction is not the only way to make money, when wealth accumulation, especially in your business, like future wealth variations, community behavior, all turning into a good value as a token value increase, all associated with transactions on insurance and health and everything else in life. Those are very difficult concepts to start playing around unless somebody has a good understanding of finance to start with. So most Web2 startups are basic business models. Unit economics is critical. Customer acquisition cost is critical. Of course, I'm oversimplifying it, but traditionally what you need to do is like find a business model, which is easy. Find the customer acquisition funnel and channel that's um, over time will bring you enough customers and you sell something more valuable. It's fundamental economics, fundamental entrepreneurship. There's no accumulation of wealth. There's no, I mean, growth is critical. Growth hacking became a thing. But Web 2 versus Web 3, I think first, Web 3 is deeply technical. Founders who are understanding this, the process of building a Web 3 concept has to understand the technical side of things. That's why like there are white papers that you need to read and understand how things will work. It's not as easy as, oh, I'll build a startup, a software as a service company, I'll pull it on Amazon Cloud and things will work out magically. I'm not trying to undermine what people are trying to build as services, deep technology products, on high tech, on cybersecurity, on edtech. Those all products are difficult to make. I'm not a product guy, but I appreciate the effort going on the technical side, especially like fintechs, deeply technical, deeply integration focused. So things are different and difficult in Web 2 in some industries. But again, Web 3, I think, is another level of complexity, both technically and economical. And those are, I think, those are different. It requires a different set of skills and requires a different set of teams. Two-man team is very hard to. I think a two-man team will be very difficult to see building something very important in Web3, whereas a two-man, three-man, or three-woman team can build something relatively easier in the Web2 domain. But of course, there are some products that are overly complicated technologically as well. It depends on the business models, but like I think that there's a slight difference in the caliber of things happening.
Very cool. I think my last question for you is actually related to, because you talked about, you went through you've helped design rather a lot of entrepreneurship programs, and a lot of this is from impact funds or organizations trying to make an impact, right? So I guess the question here is, why is entrepreneurship the focal point for a lot of nations and a lot of organizations who want to make an impact? Why entrepreneurship? Why not just go and, I don't know, build stuff that will, help people eat more? I don't know
Yeah.
whatever it is.
I think I touched upon this inefficiency in resource management, that one part is corruption. Um, it really takes huge loads of time and money and a lot of loss of inefficiency due to these transactional layers. In order to get to right people, you need intermediaries. And it's very difficult for a government to do it. It's very difficult for a municipality to do it. It's very difficult for a large company to do it. But it has to be done because we have fair share of problems we created for ourselves as humanity. And again, the solution of the problem is us. And the way I see impact becoming an important topic in government agendas or company agendas, even, like we help large companies like Siemens and Ford in getting the talented people inside, build up new things, looking for the new frontiers. Is about like trickling down effects is very difficult to replicate. Entrepreneurship comes from bottom up. People, individuals see a problem, build a team around a solution that will solve that problem, and they are more efficient because they don't have resources. They need to prove things work in order to get resources in the form of revenue, solving a problem, or in the form of financing, mostly investing. And that bottom up efficiency, that bottom up passion that people are using their energy, their network, their resources to build a solution. You can't just create an institution, a development agency, or anything and say, okay, I'm going to be solving these problems. Like, professionals are inefficient because they have a job, they're tasked to do a job, and they're paid for that job. Entrepreneurs are efficient because they need to create value in order to get paid. So the driving force is much more stronger in the entrepreneurial side, and those are the ones who push things forward. And I think this is the reason why a lot of the institutions we work with, a lot of the development agencies we work with development agencies all around the world, and we are not telling the development agency to do this, to do that. We're helping the development agency find entrepreneurs. We increase the caliber of the entrepreneurs. We increase the caliber of mentors or angel investors or people in the VC industry. So they're different parts of the ecosystem we serve. And so that the ecosystem starts churning value out of itself. Not that somebody comes and dumps a lot of money and then things will go, okay, we spend a lot of money on entrepreneurship. Okay, so which entrepreneurs took benefit of it? Which students took benefit of it? Which people in need took benefit of it? And it's very important that these impacts, these investments are trickled down to actually to the bottom of the pile, which is individuals, students, people in need of creating a future for themselves, not people in need of aid or anything. So going forward, entrepreneurship is value creation. Value creation for the entrepreneur himself or herself. First, they survive. But more importantly, value creation for everybody around. Small, medium enterprise building. That's value creation. That's creating wealth and opportunities for other people. And one good reason for doing that is employability is going to decrease over and over time. As we get more efficient, we will need less people. We will need less people in government. We will need less people in municipalities. We will need less people in corporates. That's what efficiency is bringing. And don't get me started on the artificial intelligence on that front. Things will be very, 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 very different going forward. We will not need individuals to do the work. We will need individuals to create the structures for the work. And that's a very different thing. Not many people will be able to do that unless they train themselves, which is expensive and difficult at this time. We talked about education being a problem, but education being solved with other solutions, lifelong learning and everything else. And I think the path towards not equality, I'm not that idealistic or naive, but the path to self-preservation and value creation is only going to go through enabling people to become entrepreneurs, not necessarily building startups. That startup is a different animal, but building a capacity for entrepreneurship, building a capacity for innovation is far more important than building a capacity for technical knowledge at the moment. Yes, I'm not undermining the ability of universities or research institutions. Fundamental research needs to be done and funded and kept going, but practical side of things should be taught to individuals, which is currently not being done. And that's why I built a program called SAGE, which is a Students' Academy for Global Entrepreneurship, which only targets not to create entrepreneurs, but to create an entrepreneurial mindset in young adults. And it's the mindset. It could be a social entrepreneur, you could be a corporate entrepreneur, you could be a value-based entrepreneur, self-entrepreneur, or you can build a startup. All are forms of value creation, but not everybody understands this. Not everybody teaches this. Not everybody appreciates how much more we need, how much people need to do and learn to be able to understand this. Because like going to a 9-to-5 job is not going to be the life of millions and billions in the future. We're not going to have that many jobs going forward.
Fascinating.
No, thank you so much, Ozan. It was great to see and understand. Always love the discussion with you. It's you taking us to the spaceship of knowledge, I would say, and that I appreciate that. And
Sure.
it's always, enlightening. And I hope that the audience really benefit from the nuggets that you drop. and thank you so much.
One by one.
So yeah, and as you mentioned, to just add on what you just said, and I'm sure you're one of the witness of this amazing ecosystem. I think we met like 6-7 years ago in Saudi Arabia, and
Dubai.
the notion, in Dubai and then Saudi Arabia at one point, where the ecosystem was like, particularly for Saudi, with the local, they were just few entrepreneurs. They were like, they didn't even know, what it was all about. And I remember people saying, and they were like small ecosystem, very small, not even an ecosystem. And now you have top unicorn coming out of the country in what, like less than six years.
Absolutely. I mean, 10 years ago, when we designed these programs, we were having a hard time convincing people to come to our sessions.
Yeah.
Now, the program Scout has built is getting applications from all around the world in thousands. Crazy.
And exactly. And what was exciting, because I remember in Dubai, the ecosystem even was coming out of established employees, C-level, C-suite. So we were able to capture people who were working for the top company in the world, but had time to build the business at night. So that's where the early entrepreneurs start to start. But among the local population, it was still nothing happening, to be honest, in UAE, and it's still not really much happening in UAE in particular. But when you plant the seed in Saudi Arabia, and now you have maybe like, I see at least 5-10 unicorns coming out of the country.
Inshallah.
Yeah, and it's happening. So yeah, it's exactly what you say, and I really like what your concept of seeding at a very early stage, young people to grow with that kind of mindset, because as you mentioned, they will be competing with the Bangladeshi, they will
100%.
Africans.
100%.
You're not secure anymore, even being a European and like having feeling that you can. So these things is shifting fast, and if people are not adopting fast enough, they will, we will take the best wherever they are, and that's
I teach in a high school. I practice these with like 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds, and the thing I keep saying them, unless you want to be living in your parents' your current bedroom when you're 40, you need to start building value now.
Trust me, I know some people, they stay till 50 today.
Yeah,
I know some people, they stay until 50 years old still with their parents. I don't want to mention some name.
Okay, Ozan. So if you're an entrepreneur, you should get in touch with Ozan for mentorship. If you are in a corporate entrepreneurship program, you should get in touch with Ozan for help in your program. If you're at university, you should also get in touch with Ozan. So Ozan, how can all these people get in touch with you?
Ozan at yellowx.co is the best email. Or I'm these days, unfortunately, I can't handle the news. I'm not doing well with what's happening. So I'm away from social media. I used to say ping me on Twitter, but ping me on Twitter. So I'll try, but like email is, I think, the best form. That's again .com.co. And Mr. Ozan Sönmez is the Twitter handle.
Thank you so much.